the people of York have other ideas. In 1069, they rebel. They ally with a Danish invasion force, storm the castle, and slaughter every Norman inside. For a brief, glorious moment, York is free again. William's response is apocalyptic. He unleashes the harrying of the North, a campaign of systematic destruction that remains one of the darkest chapters in English history. From York to Durham, his soldiers burn every village, every farm, every field. They slaughter livestock, destroy food stores, salt the earth. The chroniclers who witness it can't find words adequate to describe the horror. People starve in their thousands. Some turn to cannibalism. Yorkshire becomes a wasteland. William rebuilds York Castle, and this time there will be no rebellion. The message is clear: defy me, and I will turn your world to ash. But life continues. Slowly, painfully, York recovers. Trade resumes. The Minster begins its transformation from timber Anglo-Saxon church to stone Norman cathedral. And York gains something unexpected: a saint. In 1153, Archbishop William returns to York after years of exile. The city turns out to welcome him home. So many people crowd onto Ouse Bridge to see him that the bridge collapses, hurling hundreds into the river below. And then the miracle. Not a single person dies. William's tomb in the Minster becomes a pilgrimage destination, drawing visitors from across England. But 1190 brings a horror that stains York's history to this day. England is preparing for the Third Crusade, and anti-Jewish violence erupts across the country. In York, a mob turns on the Jewish community. The Jews seek refuge in Clifford's Tower, the wooden keep of York Castle. For days, the mob besieges them, demanding conversion or death. On the night of March 16th, facing certain massacre, many choose to die by their own hand rather than give the mob the satisfaction. Those who come out hoping for mercy are murdered anyway. Around 150 people die that night. The exact number is lost to history, but the shame remains. York is wealthy now, powerful, connected to royal authority, but it's also capable of terrible cruelty. The 13th century will test the city in different ways. It's the year 1212. King John, probably the worst king England ever has, does something remarkable for York. He grants the city powers of self-governance. York can now run its own affairs, collect its own taxes, administer its own justice. It's essentially an independent city-state within England. This isn't charity, this is business. York has become rich, staggeringly rich, from the wool trade. English wool is the finest in Europe, and York is one of the primary centres for processing and exporting it. With wealth comes power, and York is flexing that power. Then comes 1298, and King Edward I, Longshanks, the Hammer of the Scots, moves the entire English government to York. Not just himself, but everything. The treasury, the exchequer, the law courts, the administrative machinery that runs the kingdom. For 6 years, if you want to do business with the English government, you come to York. Why? Edward is obsessed with conquering Scotland. He needs his government close to the wall, and York is the perfect forward base. York isn't just important, it's the temporary capital of England. The Scots notice. In 1319, they raid south and come right to York's walls. In the fighting, they kill the city's mayor. This isn't some distant war, this is battle at the gates. Edward III has happier memories of York. In 1328, he marries Philippa of Hainault in York Minster, in a ceremony that brings the flower of European nobility to the city. York is at the peak of its medieval glory, wealthy from trade, favoured by kings, powerful in its own right. And then comes something much bleaker in 1349. The Black Death arrives in York like a thief in the night. Plague sweeps through the cramped medieval streets, jumping from house to house, person to person. There's no understanding of how disease spreads, no way to stop it. People die in their homes, in the streets, at their workbenches. The death carts can't keep up. Somewhere between a third and half of York's population dies within months. The economic collapse is immediate. Trade stops. Workshops stand empty. Fields go untended. The city recovers, but it takes decades. And the 15th century brings new conflicts, political and religious battles that cut even deeper than plague. Archbishop Richard Scrope stands before his congregation and preaches rebellion. The taxes are too high, the king's rule too corrupt, the people too oppressed. Scrope is one of the most powerful churchmen in England, and he's calling for uprising. King Henry IV responds with ruthless efficiency. He has Scrope arrested, tried, and beheaded. The execution shocks England. Archbishops aren't supposed to be executed, they're supposed to be untouchable. But Henry IV doesn't care about tradition. Scrope's head comes off, and his body is buried in York Minster. Almost immediately, people begin to venerate him as a martyr. The medieval world is ending. The age of absolute royal power is beginning. And York is about to be caught up in the bloodiest family conflict in English history. In 1472, after 2.5 centuries of construction, York Minster is finally complete. The Gothic cathedral that began in 1220 is consecrated, soaring pointed arches, massive stained glass windows, stone vaults reaching toward heaven. It's the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe. The building that will define York's skyline for centuries to come is finished. But all the while, England has been caught up in a horrible war. Rewind to the year 1455. The country descends into civil war. Not a war against foreign invaders, but something far more vicious. A dynastic struggle between two branches of the same royal family, both descended from King Edward III. They're fighting for the throne of England, and the conflict will become known as the Wars of the Roses. On one side, the House of Lancaster, wearing the red rose as their symbol. On the other, the House of York, with the white rose. And York, the city, isn't just caught up in this war. It's at the very heart of it. The white rose flies from these walls. Yorkist armies march from these streets. When a Yorkist sits on the throne, York prospers. When a Lancastrian wins, York suffers. 3 kings from the House of York rule England. Edward IV, who wins the throne through battle. His young son, Edward V, who reigns for just 2 months before disappearing. And Richard III, the most controversial of them all. York's champion, the city's protector. To York, he's a patron, a benefactor, someone who genuinely cares about the North. When he rides through these streets, people cheer. When he grants the city new privileges, they're grateful. Richard is York's king in a way no southern monarch ever was. And then comes August 22nd, 1485, Bosworth Field. Richard III dies in battle, cut down by Henry Tudor's forces. The last Yorkist king falls in the mud of Leicestershire, and with him dies the House of York's claim to the throne. York mourns. The Tudors have won, and for this city, it feels like defeat. The white rose is finished, the red rose triumphant. A new dynasty begins, and they have no love for the North, no special affection for York. The Tudors will bring their own kind of warfare, religious warfare that cuts even deeper than political conflict.